It's Saturday afternoon on the Han River. Thousands of people, everywhere, and yet somehow, nobody is in anyone's way. A family unpacks a full meal from a convenience store bag. Chicken, ramen, beer, disposable chopsticks, laid out on a mat with the precision of a military deployment. Nearby, a couple has claimed exactly enough space for two. Not more, not less. Their mat edges stop at an invisible line that nobody drew and everyone respects. A group of university students sets up a speaker. Volume, high enough to enjoy, low enough not to impose. No park rangers, no enforcement, no signs telling anyone what to do. And yet the entire riverbank, 4 kilometers of it, is running in perfect coordinated harmony. You think this is just a nice day out. It isn't. You are standing inside one of the most sophisticated, informal social coordination systems ever assembled. And it runs on 3 cultural algorithms you've already met. This is K-Logic Field Test, and today we decode the Han River Protocol. Picture this. You've just arrived at Yeouido Hangang Park on a Saturday afternoon in May. The cherry blossoms finished 2 weeks ago, but the grass is still thick and green, and the river is catching the afternoon light in long gold strips. You find a spot, lay down your mat, look around, and slowly, something registers that you can't immediately name. The density is extraordinary. Thousands of people within your sightline, more than you'd see at most Western music festivals, and yet the atmosphere is not crowded, not chaotic, not tense. It's relaxed, coordinated, almost choreographed. The family to your left has created a complete domestic environment in a space roughly 3 meters square. Portable gas stove, multiple dishes, a small Bluetooth speaker playing music in a volume that would be audible at home, but is somehow swallowed by the ambient river noise without imposing on anyone. Their children run to the water and return and run again in a radius that never crosses into the next family space. The couple to your right has been there since before you arrived. Their mat occupies exactly the footprint of 2 people lying down with room to sit up. When a third person joins them, they don't expand, they compress, shifting position to make the geometry work without claiming additional territory. Behind you, a group of 12 university students is celebrating someone's birthday. They have a speaker, they have matching outfits, they have, somehow, managed to create a private party atmosphere in a completely public space without making anyone around them feel intruded upon. No assigned spots, no numbered sections, no enforcement of any kind. Hangang Park on a peak weekend receives an estimated 100,000 visitors. The green space along the southern bank of the Han River stretches for kilometers, and across all of it, this same quality, organized, spacious, harmonious, replicates without central coordination. The standard explanation is that Koreans are naturally considerate, polite culture, respectful society. That explanation is true, but insufficient. What is actually happening at Hangang Park is a live field test of 3 cultural algorithms running simultaneously in real urban space: Nunchi, Jeong, and the particular Korean relationship with shared public infrastructure that Pali-Pali built. Understanding these algorithms doesn't just explain Hangang Park, it explains why Korean public spaces feel the way they do, and why that feeling is so difficult to replicate anywhere else. Watch how Koreans claim space at Hangang Park. It is not random, it is not aggressive, it is a negotiation, conducted entirely through Nunchi, entirely without words, in real time. Before laying down a mat, the practiced Hangang visitor reads the existing spatial pattern. Where are the gaps? What is the implied radius of each existing group? If a family has a stove running, they have implicitly claimed the downwind space around it. If a group has a speaker, they have implicitly acknowledged they are generating sound that requires buffer space. If 2 mats are already close together, the space between them is not necessarily available. It may be a communal corridor that both groups are preserving. None of this is communicated verbally. All of it is read through Nunchi, the real-time social data processing system that Koreans deploy automatically in any shared space. The result is that 100,000 people self-organize into a functional spatial arrangement without a single instruction. The mat edges that appear randomly distributed are not random. They are the visible output of thousands of simultaneous Nunchi calculations, each one reading the social data of the surrounding space and positioning accordingly. For international visitors, the failure to run this calculation produces the most common Hangang social friction: the oversized mat, the speaker volume that doesn't account for neighbors, the expansion into implied corridor space. These are not rudeness violations, they are Nunchi failures, the absence of the social data processing that every Korean on that riverbank is running automatically. Field Observation 2. Jeong as infrastructure. The convenience store ecosystem surrounding Hangang Park is one of the most studied examples of urban retail infrastructure in Korea. GS25, CU, and 7-Eleven branches cluster at every park entrance, stocked specifically for riverside consumption. The fried chicken, the instant ramen cups designed to be eaten with chopsticks while seated on a mat, the specific beer-to-snack ratios that Korean picnic culture has optimized over decades. This is not accidental retail placement. It is Jeong-made infrastructure. The Korean picnic is primarily not about food. It is about the creation of a shared experience, the deliberate construction of a Jeong moment in a public space. The act of preparing and sharing food is one of the most powerful Jeong accelerators in Korean culture. The convenience store bag unpacked on a Hangang mat is not just a meal, it is a bonding protocol. Watch what happens when the food comes out. Conversations deepen, physical distance between group members contracts, the invisible emotional ledger, Jeong's core mechanism, begins accumulating entries. The family that shared their extra kimbap with a neighboring couple has initiated a transaction that has nothing to do with kimbap. And the Han River provides the perfect physical context for this, a shared backdrop so large and neutral that it absorbs individual group boundaries and creates a sense of collective experience. The river is everyone's, the mat is yours, the moment is shared. Field Observation 3. Pali-Pali and the infrastructure of leisure. Here is the observation that surprises most international visitors. Korean leisure is fast. Not anxious fast, efficient fast. The Hangang picnic is set up quickly, enjoyed fully, and dismantled completely with the same compressed urgency that Pali-Pali applies to every other domain of Korean life. The bicycle rental system processes queues at a speed that would be considered aggressive in most Western contexts. The convenience store staff restocks the riverside branches in rotation patterns optimized for peak hour demand. The waste disposal system, the designated rubbish points at regular intervals along the riverbank, is used with a compliance rate that keeps the park clean despite the volume of visitors, because disposing of waste quickly and correctly is the Pali-Pali efficient choice. Even the relaxation is optimized. Koreans don't drift into leisure the way many Western cultures do, the slow, unstructured, boundaryless afternoon that extends indefinitely. The Hangang picnic has a shape. It begins, it peaks, it ends. The mat goes back in the bag, the rubbish goes in the bin. The space is returned to the commons in the condition it was found, ready for the next group to run the same protocol. This is Pali-Pali in its most elegant form, the application of compressed efficiency not to work, but to the quality of rest itself.
Hangang Park is not a park. It is a mirror. What the Han River reflects back at the society gathered on its banks every weekend is a set of deeply encoded beliefs about what public space is for and who it belongs to. In many Western cities, public parks exist in a state of managed tension. The space belongs to everyone in theory and to no one in particular in practice. Usage is individual and often defensive. People claim territory, avoid eye contact with strangers, orient their bodies away from other groups. The park is a collection of private bubbles that happen to share a lawn. Hangang Park operates on a completely different logic. The space is genuinely shared, not in the legal sense, not because a sign says so, but in the behavioral sense. Every person on that riverbank has implicitly agreed to a set of protocols that treat the space as a commons, to be used fully, to be left intact, to be available to the next person in the same condition you found it. This is not politeness, it is a deeply Korean relationship with collective infrastructure. Korea's compressed development, the Pali-Pali urgency that built an entire modern nation within 2 generations, required a level of collective coordination that most societies never develop. The factory floors, the construction sites, the offices that produced the Korean economic miracle all ran on the same logic: individual efficiency in service of collective output. The space belongs to the work. You belong to the space while you're in it. When you leave, you return it. Hangang Park is that logic applied to leisure. And there is something else the river reveals, something that the field data makes visible only when you watch long enough. The Han River was not always a park. For most of Korea's modern history, it was an industrial waterway, a resource to be extracted from, not gathered beside. The transformation of the Han River bank into one of the world's great urban public spaces was a deliberate policy decision executed with Pali-Pali speed in the 1980s that created infrastructure the Korean public then filled with exactly the social protocols that Korean culture had been developing for centuries. The park was built in years. The protocols that make it work were built over generations. What you were watching on a Saturday afternoon at Hangang is not Koreans being naturally good at sharing space. You were watching the output of a society that has, through collective historical experience, developed an unusually sophisticated relationship between individual behavior and collective resource. The river holds it all. The Han River Protocol is not a set of rules. Nobody wrote it down. Nobody enforces it. Nobody teaches it explicitly to children, though children absorb it by watching adults and absorbing the same cultural operating system that has been running in Korean society for generations. It is, in the most precise sense of the term, an emergent system, one that arises from the interaction of individual cultural algorithms without central coordination, producing a collective outcome that no individual designed and no institution maintains. For the modern traveler sitting on a rented mat at Yeouido on a Saturday afternoon, the Han River Protocol is experienced as something simpler, a feeling. The feeling that this space is generous, that there is room for you here, that the thousands of people around you are not competition for limited territory, but participants in a shared experience that your presence enriches rather than diminishes. That feeling is not accidental. It is the output of Nunchi reading the room across an entire riverbank, of Jeong accumulating in 1,000 simultaneous small transactions of shared food and shared space, of Pali-Pali ensuring that the space is used efficiently enough that it never feels scarce, even when 100,000 people are using it simultaneously. What the Han River teaches the world is something that urban planners, social engineers, and policy designers spend careers trying to produce: a public space that people genuinely want to share, that they treat with collective care, that regenerates itself through use rather than degrading. Most cities try to produce this through infrastructure: better benches, better lighting, better signage. Korea produced it through culture, through centuries of collective experience that encoded the protocols of shared space so deeply into individual behavior that the infrastructure became almost irrelevant. The mat edges will be respected, the rubbish will be binned, the space will be returned to the commons. Not because of signs, not because of rangers, because the river has always been everyone's. And in Korea,
What belongs to everyone is cared for by everyone. That is the Han River Protocol. Field test complete. The blueprint was always visible. You just needed to know what you were standing on.